Hello and welcome to EdTech and Pancakes, a podcast about paradigm shifts in education. I'm your host, 𝐓𝐸𝐸 𝐬𝐸𝐸, and I am honored and excited to be featuring Märt Aro on the very first episode today. Märt is a very well-known name in the industry. He's an education innovator, EdTech enthusiast, a keynote and TEDx speaker. There's actually so much that I will need to use my cheat sheet to give Märt a proper introduction. Since 2004, Märt has co-founded 4 companies and 5 NGOs for education development, and at the same time, he has been active on the boards of several organizations. In 2011, together with 2 other co-founders, Märt has launched the DreamApply student enrollment platform to make student admission more efficient for universities and more accessible for students. In 2016, Märt co-founded the Nordic EdTech Forum, N8, which brings together 200 founders of EdTech startups from across 8 Northern European countries. The aim of N8 is to enable peer-to-peer learning between the founders. And if this is not enough, Märt also co-authored the Youth Good Ideas book in 2005. The book brings together the life experiences of 40 leaders from around Estonia with the objective of inspiring youth to find their path. The list goes on, and you can find more on Märt's personal website, which is 𝐴𝐸𝐸.me. And I highly encourage you to listen to Märt's TED Talk called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly Truth about Innovation in Education. Märt, thank you so much for making time for this, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, 𝐓𝐸𝐸. It's really a pleasure to join you today.
It's a pleasure for me as well. And your journey is so fascinating and inspiring. So the first question I'd like to ask is, what prompted your curiosity to begin with? What was it that made you interested in education and EdTech?
It's a good question. I'm getting this every now and then, and I don't have a good answer to this question, actually. As long as I kind of remember, I've been interested in education and the way we learn, and I've always been a bit critical towards what we're doing with school, and I've always seen opportunities how to make things better. It's like I would even jokingly call it the disease. I always have these ideas coming up, what I would really like to execute and see if we can make something better. And this has also prompted me to understand that there is so many things that can be done that no one person can do all of these things. So in the recent 7-8 years, I've been focusing on supporting others, improving the quality of the education innovation ecosystem in Estonia, but also very much internationally in Europe, but also outside of Europe. For example, in Latin America, I've been quite a few times. And this has resulted in many new people coming with their ideas, trying to help to improve some verticals or some angles in education.
Beautiful. That's fascinating. And would you say, oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just noticed that I almost managed to avoid answering your question.
Well, that's a skill, so you deserve credit for that as well. But I'm curious, do you think working in EdTech and having established all these companies, has this influenced your general outlook on life? And if so, how has it influenced it?
I mean, probably, of course, the fact alone that often we are thinking that, hey, there is this and that problem in our lives, but like we don't feel empowered to solve these problems. But if you start just from a problem that seems especially close to the heart, and kind of try to choose a reasonable size problem, maybe as in the beginning, then you can find that, hey, all of us are able to make things better for our lives. And maybe this is something about our culture here as well, that a lot of us think in this sense that that we are empowered. Actually, human beings are surprisingly powerful. And yeah, if we talk about EdTech, and maybe a lot of people don't know why entrepreneurship in education development is so important. So essentially, we actually didn't start out as a company at all. We started as an NGO. It was 2003, I guess. And this is how we did the first youth conferences to inspire young people about how to find their path in life. Because we felt that the education system didn't provide much value in like answering this hard question for young people. And so we organized this large youth conferences, like 500 kids, 400 or 500 kids coming together. And we had the best speakers that we were able to find to them. And we were still very young ourselves. I was in the first year of university. Sten was in 12th grade and Laura was in the 11th grade. I'm pretty confident this is when we started. So, and what we learned was that if you want to really have an impact in the quality of lives of other people, then there are like a limited amount of pathways that you can choose on the organizational level. And one of them is, of course, to do this kind of NGOs that are driven by some kind of mission. But you can also go to work, for example, in a government organization, or you can try to go and do a company. But what we defined pretty soon is that if you want to have impact in scale, then it's very hard to do this as an NGO in our context, because the basic principles that you need to get to are scalability and sustainability. And like these are like probably the two most important principles what I'm teaching about to people that have ideas of how to make something better about education. And scalability meaning that you can start working with one person or one student or one classroom or one school, but straight away if you it's useful to have this idea in the back of your neck that if you come up with something that actually creates value to fellow citizens, then how would it be possible for these people to conveniently take advantage of your, for example, new methodology for learning, I don't know, multiplication table? Because if you don't figure this out in advance, if you don't have it in your mind, then you can end up in a situation where you've developed an amazing, I don't know, new approach for learning or teaching something, but only you can use it, and then it's of course it doesn't have any impact on the global scale, or almost no impact. So scalability is one, and the second one is the sustainability. In the most simple words, sustainability means that we have an agreement in our society that everybody needs to pay our own bills, and we need to respect this agreement that we have in our society. And this also extends to people that have very, very big hearts and would like to contribute to making everybody's lives better, unfortunately or fortunately. So if you want to have an impact, you need to, usually you need to hire other people. You need to have a bigger team than one person. It's very difficult to make big things happen alone. And especially you need people that have different backgrounds, different expertise. Because, for example, I could be very good in IT, but I have no idea of marketing. And of course, then it doesn't work. you usually need very different type of know-how of how to make things happen. So, but for example, if you want to have somebody in your team, you need to respect the basic agreement that we all need to pay our bills and feed our families. So, and this is what is necessary to do with your colleagues as well, to make sure that everybody is able to have enough income. Because what happens otherwise is that, unfortunately, the people need to go and work somewhere else, besides helping you to fulfill your mission. And this is, it's going to be very sad, because you're always going to be losing really great people, because you just cannot pay fair salaries to people. So this is kind of a crucial principle to keep in mind. And for people that are on the other side of the table, if you have a startup coming to you and saying in education, saying that, hey, we have this amazing idea of how to make something better about education, I'll try to open doors. Like this is a very important kind of thing to keep in mind. There is a lot of people in the world who don't understand this, that if you are in decision-making position and somebody's doing something that really you like and it creates value, potentially creates value at least, then how can we support these teams? Because often this, I mean, when I'm looking back to my 20 years of education development work, there are almost only these amazing people in the field of education development that come to this field because they truly believe that they can make something better for everybody, or at least for a small group of people, and they are they would be doing this for free if they could. So and these people almost never are business sharks. There's very, very, very few rare exceptions, because, and if you look at the statistics as well, it's very difficult to make a lot of money in education. Like when we look at DreamApply, for example, we started to calculate on the basis that you can like the goal was to help people to go to study abroad. This was the initial mission. So for young people to have an international learning experience. And of course, there is a very big reason behind it. Because if you go to study abroad as a young person, you will have, in addition to the academic learning, you will have a massive cultural learning. So you almost get 2 degrees at once. And everybody who's done studies abroad will confirm that, yes, this is exactly what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
And when we started, this was kind of just a little dream that, hey, we know that it's possible to have a serious impact on humans' development when they go to study abroad. This is one of the easiest ways to improve the quality of education. So we really should do this and should do our best to support young people with getting this international experience. And so we started quite a few initiatives to do that. We even launched an NGO to bring other organizations together to help young people that were working with various aspects of international learning. So and we actually we built kind of a marketing company as well to help universities to market themselves internationally. And pretty soon we learned that it's very difficult for a university to manage a young person, to manage the process of a young person coming to the university. So Estonians like to solve all the world's problems with the help of software. So then we decided that, hey, let's try to do this as well. And And we started to do some very simple calculations. This is maybe interesting for people who are thinking about building something themselves, or for people who are needing to make a decision if to open some doors. So the calculations are easy in the sense that when you, for example, when you look at a country like Estonia, you see that, okay, we have like 10 higher education institutions here. I don't know, it's not true, but I'm just giving a random number. And our calculation was that if we really want to do a super high quality admissions management system that is able to facilitate the whole process, which consists usually about 50 different steps of a student coming to enter the door of the university, then it's a complex software, and it's going to cost a lot of money. Like, we're talking about millions of euros. So if we want to make it affordable for the universities, like in the sense that it's really so cheap that you cannot have arguments that, hey, we shouldn't use it, then you need at least 200 universities to use this one system. So you straight away understand that you cannot stay in one country. You straight away need to be thinking about, okay, we need to make a system that is applicable across the globe. And this is kind of how it started. And then we have gotten to the level. So it was funny because you in the beginning it's all theoretical. You kind of have it in your mind on maybe a whiteboard, on paper, and then you start working towards it. And in the beginning, it can be really frightening that, hey, maybe if we cannot fulfill our plan, maybe our calculations are wrong, maybe our idea for the universities is wrong, that they really don't appreciate this kind of offering of solutions to them, because we took several leaps of faith, really, when we started to prepare the system. One of the maybe most important leaps of faith was from Lauri's side, who is the CTO, or technical engineer, like chief technical engineer, and who has been partner of DreamApply from the very beginning. And so at this time, universities weren't used to working with software that is hosted outside of the university. Nowadays, it's totally natural. A lot of universities are looking for systems that they don't have to host locally, because it's a lot of headache to host a complex software. But at this time, it was unheard of. It was very unique if universities were doing something like this. So, but we saw that we are able to provide so much higher quality experience if we are organizing hosting from our side and making sure that the software is always up to date, always the final version, the latest version of the software is running in for all of the customers, all of the universities. It's not cheaper, actually. It's more costly to run systems. Hosting cost is pretty significant for a software like that, but the upside is bigger, actually. So the quality of the service that we can guarantee from our side is so much bigger that we believe it pays off. And this is maybe one of the major leaps of faith that we did. And in the beginning, it was pretty confusing for universities. Like, why are these gentlemen bringing us something that makes a lot of sense, but in a format maybe that is not very usual? Several universities have needed to redesign, or at this time when we were still in the early days, need to redesign the way that they engage with private sector. So rebuilding their whole purchasing systems and bureaucracies, just because of wanting to collaborate with us. So
My apologies. There's just so much in your answer and also answers to the questions that I intended to ask. And let's definitely go back to DreamApply. But for a second, I wanted to ask you this. So let's because we're going to cover a lot of ground in terms of edtech. So we plan to speak about multiple aspects, marketing, university admissions, how AI is influencing it, and so much more on the podcast. But you're a great person to ask this question. How do you define even edtech? What are the questions that you think are within the scope or maybe should be within the scope and aren't?
So that's a good question. And the short answer is that every source of technology that somehow creates value in education, in my view, can be edtech. But it's also a question of who is building something and how they feel that more appropriate in the segmentation, because we have a lot of technologies that are creating value not only in education but also in some other fields. And of course, then these kind of creators can choose if they want to be an edtech more, or if they feel that they're more, I don't know, medtech. And it's okay. So it's today I would say still that it's a bit loosely kind of defined term, and maybe it's not even necessary to define it more stronger.
Mm.
But this reminds me that I wanted to elaborate more on why entrepreneurship. Like, because edtech, primarily when we talk about edtech, we consider private sector startups, which is kind of, it's not really true. We could consider any technologies that are creating value in education, edtech, also government led or NGO led. But what I would like to usually see is innovations. And by innovation, I mean we are trying to look usually at an old problem with a new lens.
Yeah.
And seeing how we could use these principles of scalability and sustainability in making sure that we can solve this problem for everybody globally, once and for all, basically. And when there is a lot of people that maybe haven't thought about how many challenges there are in education. Education is a massive field. It's economically, it's one of the largest fields that our GDP is running into. So about $7 trillion globally. It's these numbers are so humongous that it's impossible to probably compare it with anything kind of reasonable. It can be usually, if you look at the country size, 4 to 6% of the GDP is going to education sector, which is one of the largest expenditures for a government. So and the challenge, of course, is that we know that we could do so much better with the quality of, let's say, approaches or teaching what we are offering. There is a massive amount of new modern research, neurosciences, psychology that we are not using yet in the education as a whole. And some of this research is actually already 100 years old, and it's still new compared to the education system. So, but yeah, we can debate the education system and why it is like it is as well. But maybe this is a topic for another session. What I want to go back to for a moment is why entrepreneurship? Because I've been evaluating for a long time various approaches for, and what I'm looking for primarily is that we could have cheap enough solutions at the same time with very high quality. Because, I mean, when we think logically, as a parent, I would, of course, like to have my child the best possible education. there is no question about, hey, let's have average quality education. I'm fine with this. I mean, all of the parents normally think that, hey, I want to have the best possible quality education. And when you're looking at software development, then software is a funny animal. You can make very big differences in the, let's say, technological choices that you're making when you're deciding upon a software. And if you're making like very high quality oriented choices, then the problem can be that your solution is becoming super expensive. So, and if you're making low quality choices for your technological development, then you might have a low quality solution in the end, and nobody wants to use it. So it's always a balancing act. So how can we really have an optimum technology that is maybe enough proven, that is actually suitable for achieving the goals that we have as an innovator? And why I'm talking about this is that it becomes tremendously important when we want to develop a new education solution. And it becomes important because if you want to do these innovations, you need to have access to the right support team, like the right team members that are able to help you make these really maybe complex decisions. Because if you already have opted for a technology, it can be a lot of work to get out of this technology later. So what I've noticed when I'm looking at, like, maybe I've looked at hundreds, maybe 500 different education innovation projects that are somehow usually they are somehow using technology, not always. Modern technology, meaning IT, some kind of programming, some kind of screens maybe connected to this technology. It's not always necessary. It depends on what problem we are wanting to tackle. And now if I'm comparing these various initiatives in various sectors, then if you go to an NGO type of setup, it is possible to set up also a sustainable business model in an NGO that will be able to support the team. So it's totally doable. But what I'm usually seeing is that it's not done. So you're not able to have a sustainable maintenance and development team to help you to develop this software, but theoretically doable. So when we go to public sector, like government institutions, for example, if you opt to go to the Ministry of Education to work there, to try to fulfill your dream of fixing some challenge in education with help of technology, let's say, then what you very often face is that you cannot set up the team that you need to realize this vision. And the reason is usually connected to the way that these organizations are built. Government organizations are not typically built for supporting innovation. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. So the benefit of having this kind of government institutions that don't support innovation very well is that you have very stable organizations. So and stability is of course very good in many aspects. So it's necessary to have it. But if you really have an innovative mindset, then you might be suffering in this kind of setting. You might get very lucky. There are really great exceptions, of course, but I'm talking about my general kind of gut feeling. It's not even based on research. Although there are people that are researching these things as well, really good books. So, and you might also be suffering because of the bureaucracy, and very often you would be asked for providing evidence before you have even built anything. The problem with innovation is that when we talk about serious innovation, we cannot have any evidence before we will have a prototype ready or MVP. MVP meaning a minimum viable product that already can be used by the users, so people can play with it. But So you can start collecting the basic data. And the prototype, usually by prototype, we mean some kind of a clickable solution that we can already play with. So the users could at least have a theoretical understanding of what you have in mind. It might not work like you intended yet, but at least you can get some basic feedback. So, and surprisingly, government organizations all over the world typically are not good at creating these two initial stages, prototype and MVP stage, to start collecting this hard data and research, maybe even to see the value of these approaches. So yeah, you must have really the stars aligned to get this kind of things done, and often it takes years. Whereas when you go to a startup kind of setting, then it's just a matter of you being able to convince the right potential team members that, hey, let's build a prototype for this idea. Let's see if it works. And then it's only your responsibility. So this can be done over one weekend, for example, with a mini hackathon. And you don't even need a real hackathon. You just agree with your, I don't know, friends or however you call your partners that, hey, this is important. Let's try. Maybe you can make the world a little bit better for this group of people, teachers or learners usually. So this is the reason why startups actually in any sector are the most appropriate vehicle for trying out new ideas of solving old problems. And of course, there are many challenges also with startups. In a government organization, you might have a salary that you can support your family with. In a startup, you might not have a salary in the beginning. You might not have a salary for 3, 4, 5 years in the beginning because you don't make enough income to cover the cost of your own salary. And this is very often the time it takes to develop high quality enough innovation that people really love and are willing to pay for. So you could actually start covering the salary costs of your team members. And very often we have seen actually teams that are staying in another job. For example, I don't know, one friend of mine he was working as a marketing manager at a bigger company for quite a few years before they were able to start paying themselves a salary in their education startup that actually has now hundreds of thousands of users. So, and yeah, it's kind of a funny balancing act making these choices. Now, there are certain areas what you don't want to touch with startups. So if you need very hardcore base research or basic research, then universities have so much more opportunities in making this happen usually than startups because of they have special funding opportunities available. Or if you are wanting to solve a very critical, like a business critical problem to large organizations, this might not be a very beneficial idea to start working as a startup. But if we talk about what we call end user solutions, so for example, a teacher would need a new methodology for teaching multiplication table, and you have an idea of how to make this 10 times more effective methodology than is there at the moment in schools, then this might be a pretty good place to try to build a startup. I hope
it's so fascinating, and there's so much in your pointers. I was so curious that I didn't want to interrupt it at all. And as someone that has worked in the nonprofit and government sector, I can totally resonate with the lack of scalability in that sense. And what you pointed to reminded me of this broader philosophical discussion of altruism versus hedonism, altruism being the idea that you should do things for greater good, than hedonism being the opposite. But what if actually there is a sweet spot where these are the same in a way? So the best version of yourself, the one that's best for you is also the best for the society. And it seems like um, EdTech and successful startups kind of fall into that area. But I wanted to go a little bit beyond EdTech and like tackle education a little bit more generally. What would you say is most misunderstood about education as a concept or as a function in the society?
Amazing question. There's probably a lot of things that we could discuss under this kind of headline.
What's the first thing that comes to mind as the most misunderstood thing?
Well, I had a feeling that one of the misunderstood things for a lot of people is that that what I see happening very much is that people are just trusting let's say the system. So
Lack of questioning.
without questioning, yeah. So and maybe yeah, just to elaborate this a little bit. So what I see very much happening is that a lot of people believe that the system has been developed by such great experts, which is often the case actually. But it doesn't matter how good of an expert you are, you always see your own angles of such a big system. So and for most parents who rely on the system, it kind of looks like this, that you're bringing your child in front of the school, and the child kind of needs to walk in there, and this is where you can kind of put your hands up and say that, hey, I've done my part is done. I brought my child here. But in reality, there is so many things with education that the parents can help to do to make like improve the chances of having a better learning experience for their child and a better support system for the teachers. So and what I see more happening today is that there are parents that have maybe read a few articles about modern understanding, maybe an article about neuroscientific research on how a human brain works. And then they start criticizing in their mind or even going to the teachers and starting to teach the teachers how to do their work. And of course, this is not productive. Usually it's not a productive way of approaching these questions at all. And I've been working together a bit with the European Parents Union on these questions, and basically I think they have really good ideas there, trying to teach parents about, for example, coaching methodologies, instead of going and demanding teachers of changing the way that they do something with the kids. They are trying to teach the parents how to ask nice questions. Hey, is there something that I can support you with? And then not really backing down, because teachers are also used to manage pretty much alone. And the way that we are educating teachers today very often is not leading towards a lot of teaching about teamwork and how to engage other people, how to get help from colleagues, for example. These things are usually not covered at all in the curriculum of teacher training. Whereas in education system in 21st century context, we kind of anticipate that this is there, that the teachers know how to teach the kids a meaningful teamwork kind of setting. So and in most cases that I've seen, it's not there. So and this brings us, of course, to a wider discussion again, like what is the meaning of education in 21st century, or what is the purpose of education in 21st century, and I'm finding myself more and more behind tables where I have the feeling that I need to bring this topic up. And these tables, it can be very high level discussions like a World Bank or yeah, fun fact, World Bank is investing $5 billion a year in education development globally. So it's a very big player, and at the same time, there is so many things that we could support these organizations with, so the money would have a more big impact in where it's being invested. Then, of course, often I also see this kind of discussions with European Commission, which is pretty interesting. I mean, as this is maybe another angle that people anticipate that everything is kind of done by experts everywhere, but it's difficult with these large organizations always to get the right expertise into the right places at the right time, where these decisions need to be made of, for example, how billions of euros are being invested. So I've seen projects where you really invest billions, maybe even tens of billions of dollars, and have almost no impact. There is no changes happening, and not only, of course, by government organizations, but also by large private foundations. Sometimes these outcomes are not as expected, because we had let's say wrong expectation towards the things that we want to do. And of course it's okay, we need to have the possibility to take risks, and maybe I mean, if the biggest risk is that we might not get the impact that we wanted, then it doesn't look like a very big loss. Of course, there is a loss of opportunity always. So if we would have used the same resources in a different way, we might have had much bigger impact. But as we discussed before, in kind of large organizations or government organizations, it sometimes is very difficult to do experimentation in a meaningful way. What I mean by meaningful is that you really are quickly trying out your hypothesis, like getting the right expertise together to build a new prototype over the weekend, and then kind of running some research on it to see if it provides the value that you're looking for. So, but this is how the world works. It's not perfect most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, and I really resonate with what you just pointed to. I think it takes so much time for governments to receive feedback and then reflect it in something new, whereas in the spectrum of entrepreneurship and EdTech, is just because these organizations are actually dependent on the results for their survival. This has to be a continuous loop. And also, this reminds me of the saying that sometimes A students end up working in companies managed by B students that are owned by C students. I mean, it's a joke, but there's the metaphor in that for me is sometimes when you're just overthinking it so much that you don't create an MVP out there, so that you create you get data and you keep on working on different iterations, then it's really hard to progress further. Yeah, maybe as an academic pursuit it is, but in terms of generating meaningful change, it's quite challenging. But to shift gears to DreamApply a little bit, so you mentioned that the original goal was to support internationalization, and now there are so many things, so many problems that DreamApply solves. So it's both student enrollment and marketing and financial aid, and there are a lot of integrations in terms of scoring and automations and everything. But how do you perceive the underlying mission of DreamApply as of now?
Well, to me personally, DreamApply. So if you talk about DreamApply's own mission, then of course it is to provide universities and admissions people with the best possible tool that can be out there, it reminds me of a story that I shared with you before, that why I love DreamApply so much is this amazing feedback that we're getting all the time, and this tells me that we were right in our initial kind of thoughts of how we could help to solve this problem for the universities. But maybe we should a little bit go into details for the general audience, just to elaborate a little bit what kind of problems there are with international admissions and admissions in general. So I'm always imagining that when I'd be a person on the street, when it comes to admissions, I would think that, hey, what's about admissions? Like what's complicated there? So you have a student and you have a university, and they kind of need to meet each other, and it's done. So, but in practice, what we see normally is that there is 3, 4, 5 different regulations that needs to be followed for different types of candidates. So you might have a regulation for local candidates, the regulation for, let's say, in the European Union, you have always a regulation for European Union candidates. Then you have candidates for usually friendly countries. So there is like bilateral agreements or group agreements between countries, in addition to the European Union. And on top of this, you have the fifth case can be, let's say, the rest of the world. So, and then you might actually have very specific agreements regarding very specific countries that you don't want to have students from. But this is usually not even relevant. So, if you only try to like look at all of these different regulations, how universities should work with these candidates, and all of the government agencies that are involved there, that have their own tasks that they have to perform, they by law that they must do. For example, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they need to make sure that the people that we are inviting to our country would be, I don't know, fitting certain regulations. Maybe Ministry of Interior has some tasks there, and there could be even more things that needs to be happening before the person can enter the country. But now, if you zoom into the university kind of point of view, so you have all these different rules that you have to handle somehow, and then you have typically about 50 different things. Like this is the kind of minimum process in most universities that I've looked at, that needs to be happening in a reasonable kind of logical sequence, and you cannot make mistakes. If you do already 3 mistakes, then it is decreasing significantly the likelihood that this young person is going to study abroad at all. So it's a bit stressful situation, because you want things to go right, because otherwise everybody is going to involved in this process will have extra headache and extra work to figure things out, and the student might have a very negative experience. So you want the student to have a good experience, really, and an experience where the student feels that I understand what's happening. And now we need to keep in mind that these are usually kids, like in the bachelor's level, we talk about 18, 17, 19-year-old kids or young adults. They might have never done anything. They might not even gone abroad ever before in their life. So there is so many different concerns that these kids have in their mind in general. So we don't want to mess this up with some kind of bureaucratic kind of misconceptions or, I don't know, misunderstandings. And when we go back to these 50 different things that need to happen, and just adding that in case there is exceptions, then you just add the exceptions on top of this. Usually there is some exceptions. So, and these 50 different things are divided between 4 to 6 different departments that need to collaborate with each other effectively to be able to help the student progress in the admission pathway. So usually it's the admissions office, the financial department, maybe accommodation.
Marketing, yeah,
marketing office, of course. Marketing is usually like really the front player there, making sure that that people that are interested in our university would get the information at the right time, and the information would flow then into the admissions department. And yeah, so there could be so many people involved, and of course faculty members, people in the real teaching part of the university that need to review the documents and evaluate the academic side of the candidates. So and now try to imagine all of this happening with internal post service, which is the factual reality in very many universities still today.
Even more complications, as if that was not enough.
Yeah, so you have piles of paper. I will explain one real life situation that I've seen in my life that was really startling. So there was a university that wasn't providing. We were informed by students that it wasn't a DreamApply customer. It kind of ended up on my table. I have this general world-saving kind of problem that I always need to help people that I feel that I can. So there was complaints about one university that admissions documents are not coming through. It was already pretty late, only 1 month until the study start. And so I decided to go and visit this university. And what I saw there was crazy. So the person responsible for these applications had 3 piles of A4 papers, application forms printed out on A4 papers, to the level, like from the ground to the level of the table. 3 piles. And there was absolutely no way that this person would have been able to process all of this work that needed to be done for these candidates. So the only thing that I could do was I was explaining to the management of the university that they need to find support to this team very rapidly, and I hope that they did. But these kind of things happen. So one of the tasks of DreamApply is also always to provide transparency to what is happening, where are we stuck? Because if you have so many different people involved, you want to find this out very quickly that there is some kind of a problem somewhere, and especially on the management level of the university. I mean, management level in whoever can be responsible, maybe the head of admissions or somebody who is able to start fixing things when something doesn't work as it should. So, and this is something that that we have also received as feedback to DreamApply from universities a lot, that they firstly they respect their colleagues much more. They understand what is the purpose of their colleagues in various departments if we do this process mapping. So this maybe needs to be elaborated a little bit as well. Before an update in a university admissions system can be done, you better understand very much in details what needs to happen. So, and you need to map out all of these different regulations, and you need to map out what people need to do what in the organization exactly. So everybody would be having the best possible tools to do their job, and everybody would also receive information and have the transparency when it's time for them to do their job. this reminds me of a fun story, actually. There was one large technical university who I met with the International Admissions Office many years ago. And the head of admissions was like, "Hey, we really love DreamApply. It's helping us so much in our work, but our faculty is so backwards. They will never. They had 11 departments, I think, and they were so skeptical that the faculty will never implement DreamApply properly." And I met the same person about a year later, and then she was so excited, like, "Märt, I'm so happy. We have 9 out of our 11 faculties have implemented DreamApply properly." And do you know what the reason was? The faculty members understood that they can go to their countryside house and work out of their sofa conveniently, just going
There
through
you go.
applications and not having to go back in the summertime to the university to go and get the pile of their applications from the internal post as they used to. So
I love that.
And now they could just stay conveniently on their tablet or on their laptop, go through the work that they needed to do this day, and everything was smoothly running. And so everybody had less stress, less headache, and they could stay in the places that they loved. And this is what one thing, of course, that we've always kept in mind when developing DreamApply, that we have people in universities that like to move around. So when you go to a trip abroad, you don't want to stress about, hey, what's happening at home. For example, if you're the head of admissions, you really want to make sure that you have transparency about that everything is running smoothly and there is no hiccups in the admissions process, especially if it's like in the middle of the process in the summer, where you might have holiday actually. So
I love that story because I mean, this just shows that at the end of the day, it's all about people. I mean, if you create something that helps them have less on their minds and be able to be more present to the students, to another human being at the other spectrum, and also make sure to minimize frustrations for them. It's just so interesting that it's all about people, and this is very clearly reflected on DreamApply. And to complement what you mentioned, why you love DreamApply, and I think in that sense I resonate a lot with you. It seems like within the company there isn't like perception of positive or negative feedback. There's just like, oh, feedback is data. So what I appreciate most is this radical openness to data. And it seems like so many of the features, like the video interview feature, which is allowing you to scale in the interview process, was actually requested by clients. So, and this brings me to my next question. I mean, it's a very wide spectrum right now, and it keeps on evolving. 300 educational institutions, 40 countries. Where do you think this is going to go within the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, the world is an oyster. So yeah, I'm at the moment, it seems that we have really understood very well what is the need of the universities and also the students. Maybe one of the important things to mention about how we started to develop DreamApply was this, and I believe this is a part of the secret sauce of DreamApply, that we didn't look at the universities much in the beginning. We had researched about 100 universities' admission processes, so we knew pretty well what universities are doing before we started to build the software for universities. But we really focused hardcore on the candidate's experience and researched in details what are the needs of the candidates, where are they getting lost or confused, and you don't want this feeling of being lost or not being able to understand what's happening to me, or not having any transparency of where am I in the process. So, I mean, these are all very simple ideas, but surprisingly complicated to achieve any results if you like meaningful results. If you start working on these challenges, I still remember this middle of the night phone calls with Lori discussing how can we solve this, like from a technical perspective, super complicated problem, and how can we make it simple so the end user doesn't feel that their head is exploding in this part of this process because they cannot understand what's happening and why to them. It doesn't matter if it's like actually inside of the university or outside of the university. So, and this was really a fascinating time developing, like trying to figure out the simple solutions to the complex problems. And yeah, this reminds me of another story that why I love DreamApply. The feeling that I'm kind of having when I visit, I used to visit a lot of universities' international offices, and I really like this. So because I always had the feeling that I can have a hands-on kind of support to the people that really need to do the day-to-day work. And what I would describe the feeling with is that when you go to a normal admissions office, then very often you have this kind of a gray energy there. Like there is a little bit of a shadow there, and emotionally it's a little bit hard because a lot of the people there are feeling that they don't have the best tools, and it's very hard for them to keep things running the way that actually they dream about running things. So everybody would have a good experience. And then 3 months later, after they have implemented DreamApply, going back to the same organization and feeling this light feeling, and you have sunshine in the room. People are coming and hugging you and kissing you because they finally have the right tools to manage their work. And this was, I mean, this probably was my favorite part of everything in DreamApply. This super positive feedback from the people that finally got the things right in their organizations.
That's excellent. And I loved what you said, simple solutions to complex problems, which reminds me of a quote by one of my mentors. He used to say, simplicity is the answer to complexity. And it seems like since I started working with DreamApply, I've been very curious about like what is it that makes people resonate with DreamApply, and this simplicity and ease of use and user friendliness seems to come up all the time. This is very exciting. I feel like we could continue speaking about it for a very long time, but since our episode is nearing its end, I would love to play a little word association game with you. So I'd like to just give you a word and just let me know what comes up first in your mind. So maybe a couple of words, just your first association with it.
Perfect.
All right, beautiful. Education?
Oh, wow. Kind of straight away into the stomach.
No wrong answers.
No wrong answers. Yeah. I don't have a good answer to you if I'm thinking about if I'm really starting to think about, there is so many things that come to mind, and what I would like education to feel like is that that the kids would feel excitement. And it doesn't matter, actually, it can be adults as well. If you're an adult and you want to learn something, you should be excited about what you want to learn. It shouldn't be a frustrating idea that, hey, now I have to go and again do something that I don't like to do. And I'm very confident that we are able to achieve this.
Beautiful.
It's a matter of really pushing things ahead.
How about innovation?
Yeah, I mean, innovation is the tool to get there, what we just discussed about. And maybe this word is abused nowadays. Everybody kind of feels that they have to use this word and saying that I'm innovating something. But what I really feel about innovation is when I look at the startup definitions that are out there, I most resonate with the definition that a startup is you can call something a startup where the people that are trying to solve a problem don't really understand very well yet what problem they are solving, and they have no idea how they will make money out of this. Then you have potentially a true startup. And
so
then
embracing the uncertainty.
Yeah, you need to embrace uncertainty. Otherwise, if and the other end of the scale is that you are wanting to build a cafeteria, so you know precisely what needs to happen to have a cafeteria working, and it's very easy for most people to imagine. But when we talk about true innovation, then usually we have no idea how exactly this is going to work what solution is actually necessary to improve the situation. And it's so funny actually to see this in real life. You start building a software, for example, or a new methodology, it doesn't matter. But let's talk about software because we have built some softwares. So you imagine as a person who kind of sees a problem, how the software needs to look like, and what kind of how the users are going to use it, so it will help them to solve their problem. And you build the first prototype or MVP ready, and the people are totally lost and confused, and they cannot use the software to solve their problem, or they cannot even see that your solution really is a solution to their problem at all. It can happen. So and how you can elaborate this is that in the virtual world, the human mind works differently. So it's not possible to take something from the physical world and just not change it and put it into virtual world and expect that if it works in the physical world, it will also work. Usually, it never does. And for example, I will bring a simple example. For example, we have a lot of books that people really enjoy reading. And maybe also learning books that people like when they are in the book format, that you have real paper that you can touch and change the pages.
We all miss that, don't we?
Exactly. And now you might imagine that, hey, but let's just scan the book and let's put it online so people can read it. But then for some reason, the experience is not there. So the users don't get this experience of being excited about this book, and rightfully you should demand for something more, because the virtual world offers a tremendous amount of opportunities how to engage differently with the material that we are looking at. So mostly nowadays when I'm in this kind of discussions, somebody is talking about digitizing educational materials, and very often what these people are referring to as a bad practice is making PDFs out of physical learning materials. So like if you're listening and you need to make the choice of digitizing some learning materials, don't make PDFs out of physical books.
Good
That's
point.
the worst thing.
Well, there's one more that I actually failed to touch upon, because you're also a father. So when you hear the word parenting, what are the first associations that come to your mind?
Well, my first word that comes to mind is love. And second word is complicated. So, and I think parenting is a really funny thing, and probably one of the most giving things, but at the same time, it's also like a wicked problem because it's hard to find these right balances, and all of our children are so different. And I'm lucky to have my older son. Is having ADHD, so he's hyperactive, and we got this diagnosis in the first quarter of the first grade. Before we were kind of just seeing that he's very active, and I was really, in my heart, I knew that he's not suited for typical academic education. But we didn't know, we didn't understand what the challenge is. And actually, yeah, I call him my biggest teacher because he's been always showing the challenges of the education system and how misunderstanding we are towards how different people are and how they need to be treated differently. It's very easy to understand if there is a physical difference. Well, it's easy to understand, at least, because you can physically see that, hey, this person is able to move their hands, for example, or doesn't have eyes, or doesn't have ears. But it's very difficult to understand if the brain works a little bit differently. And and of course, in his case, it's pretty different. And then you start looking at the research. We have amazing research done. We actually, ADHD is pretty common. It depends on the country. You're saying it's about 4% of the population. So, and because of that, actually, there is a lot of research already there. But you start reading the research and you understand that, hey, nobody knows these things. It's like on the researcher's level, it's already common knowledge. Like what is the difference in the ADHD brain, how it needs to be operated differently. But yeah, I could of course go on and on about this, but and then you find yourself thinking that, hey, we just need to change the way that we are treating these kids, and you get so much better outcome. We just need to change the learning methodologies to the way that these kids would be able to get their basic needs covered, because their brains need a different stimuli. And we are today still not able to do these things. There's almost no teachers that are getting appropriate support with learning materials and methodologies. And of course, as a person who knows these things, it's heartbreaking to see that we are telling the teachers that, hey, you just have to manage. And we are telling the same to the parents who have no special training with how to actually work with their children that have these special needs, because parents of kids that don't have special brain setups cannot understand how it feels like to have this kind of children. It's impossible to understand without having personal experience there. And this is, on one hand, it's really frustrating that I have had to have this experience. But on the other hand, I'm super grateful, because this has enabled me to become so much better person and so much more respectful towards all of the different differences that we have in the human world and in the human experience. And I think this is like so hardcore evidence that we need to respect that all of us are different. We might have the same aspirations and dreams very often, and we all want love and people that we care about and that care about us. But you cannot treat the education system as a uniform system. It's and I think I really needed this close up experience to have it so explicit and so clear for me. And I really wish there would be an easy way for everybody to have the same lessons. But this is how it is.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing this. I mean, it's so inspiring to also observe how your identity as a father is influencing your initiatives and your approach to education. And in terms of the ADHD example, we will certainly have an episode on mental health and its implications in the education sector. And I love what you pointed to also in terms of like in terms of the research. There are so many things that are just axiomatic principles, and the researchers really know it, but the rest of the society is very much unaware. And when we began the podcast, I mentioned this is a podcast about paradigm shifts about education, and this is what we want it to be. And what is a paradigm shift? Actually, even in terms of innovation, there are things like, let's say when we discovered that actually Earth goes around the sun and not the other way around. It has been always true. It's just we weren't aware of that. But when we become aware of these fundamental axiomatic truths, then it's so much easier to engineer things out of that. And our intention with this podcast is to bring these types of insights that can lead to paradigm shifts and therefore empower each other and learn from each other. So I love everything that you have pointed to in this episode. And as a last question, if you could share a message to your younger self, what would you tell him? Matt is just graduating, just starting his journey, has so many questions.
You know,
Yeah.
I now when you're asking it this way, I have the feeling that all of the whole journey that I've gone through has been necessary as it is, and this has really formed me into the person that I am today, and I'm pretty happy where I am, and I feel that I have so much more to give to the world thanks to these experiences. So it's yeah, all the strange struggles but also the wins. I mean, we have always been successful with the projects that we have started, in the sense that we have always achieved very good outcomes. And but of course, we put always in also a lot of work and passion and maybe even obsession to the project. So I wouldn't approach my younger self at all. My first idea was that I would have said to myself that, hey, just don't stress that much about things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I needed to have this experience as well, probably firsthand, that stressing about things is not very practical, and if something doesn't really start moving in a way that you would like it to go, then just accepting that the reality as it is a necessary skill to learn at one point. I'm kind of looking at this. My both of my boys are now 15 and 17, so teenagers and starting to explore life. and I would like to help them to understand this, but at the same time, I have the feeling that I shouldn't take these things, these learnings, lessons away from them. So it's difficult to choose actually what kind of lessons like if you talk about education, what kind of lessons we really need to provide to the people, because in the earlier the development, it is easier to grow through pain. And just kind of starting to understand the truth about how the world works and how harsh it can be, and how to achieve still the state of mind that you like, and you achieve the feelings that you welcome in your life, and also at the same time figuring out how to put aside the feelings that you don't like in your life, and how to live your life to the fullest. And I have the feeling that it's a continuous kind of process, and it's kind of never ending. So getting to know ourselves better, and maybe principles, figure out principles, what are really meaningful for me, and understanding that it doesn't matter that others don't think that these principles are important. It's what matters only is really that I feel that these principles are important for me, and they create some kind of value for me, because there is very few people that are that obsessed with education development as I am, and it's okay. It's I'm really trying to respect everybody for their path in their life.
Beautiful. That's such a deep pointer, and I mean, yeah, I love what you said about like you just having the knowledge about, hey, don't stress isn't gonna do much. So there's a difference between having something as an intellectual understanding versus really the experience of it. And it's so fascinating. It seems like there have been pointers to this insight, even in ancient books. Like if you look at things such as Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there's this sutra which says something like the most enlightened intellect, even the most enlightened intellect and transcendence aren't the same. So there's a difference. So thank you so much for pointing to that. And it has been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure on my end as well.
And thank you for listening. I'm 𝐓𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 Goodbye.